So, George, are you ready?
Huh?
Are you ready to do the stuff we just talked about?
What stuff?
The stuff we literally just talked about.
Ken, I don't have enough room up here to remember everything. I need like I need a Memorydex box. Hi, and welcome to Crafts by Two. I'm George.
And I'm Ken.
And this is my Memorydex box.
Your Memorydex box?
This is the one I made. You have your own.
Yeah, I have this one.
I like mine. It's got polka dots and the negative polka dots inside and cork feet. Mine's adorable. Yours is cute too.
Thanks.
It's got stars.
Uh-huh. On the inside and the outside.
Yep.
So, what is a Memorydex box, George?
A Memorydex box is kind of like a Rolodex, but for cool cards that you can make and trade with friends.
Like this.
Like a Crafty Explorer Memorydex card. That video will be coming to you next week.
So, Memorydex is the Rolodex cards that, like, back in the day, before you had your phone and your contacts, you had that slider where you kept all your contacts.
Or the rolly ones.
Flippy ones.
Yeah.
Which my mom would get mad at because I would just, like, flip it really fast.
Because you're bored and you'd watch them flip all around. I did that.
So lots of crafty people started adopting it, and instead of the normal cards, which are probably like this size,
About.
they were adapting them and making little scrappy projects for memories or for trades with friends and things like that.
Memory cards. So we're going to show you how you can use some really thick material on your electronic cutting machine to make a Memorydex box.
And then when you're done, you can put your cards into it. Oh.
Yay!
And that way you can flip through them and you have them all in one place. You could make different boxes for different collections. Maybe one for your memories, one for your swaps.
And if you're part of the Crafty Explorer Facebook group, we're going to start doing swaps. So you'll be able to collect all kinds of cool cards from different people all over the country, maybe all over the world, Ken.
In the description of the video down below, we'll talk about Crafty Explorers, how you can join that group on Facebook if you like, and we'll have the link to the SVG file.
And a list of the materials that we used. Additionally, in with the SVG file, we have these instructions that tells you what to set your electronic cutting machine to cut through the chipboard that we used for this particular box.
And if you're a patron of ours on Patreon, you get some different files. So you get the little scalloped edge. Maybe it's a little easier to see on this one.
Probably.
The scalloped edge that we used here, as opposed to just flat pieces.
So we have instructions for the Silhouette Cameo, the Brother Scan and Cut, the Cricut Explorer family of devices, and the Cricut Maker. You should check out these instructions because the Silhouette Cameo and the Brother Scan and Cut almost cut through the chipboard, so you're probably going to have a craft knife. We recommend the pen blade, but you could use an X-Acto or the Tim Holtz knife or whatever you want to use to finish cutting the rest of the way through the chipboard. The Cricut Explorer with a deep cut blade cuts all the way through, or just about all the way through. You might get a corner that doesn't cut. And the same thing with the Cricut Maker with a deep cut blade. Though with the Cricut Maker, you got to slide the wheels over to the side, and the Cricut software doesn't like the SVG all the time. So that's all kind of explained in the instructions on what you have to do with each particular machine.
And don't worry that you're not going to get perfect clean edges when you're doing your cuts with the, what is it? I want to say poster board, and that's not it.
Chipboard.
Chipboard.
Think of Chip and Dale.
But you're going to be wrapping up all the materials in your chosen paper So you don't have to worry about the edges showing or not being quite perfect. It's really just to give the structure. It really does make a pretty solid box. I know.
Chip board.
Yeah, I saw you do it. I was trying to get through this.
I'm adorable.
You can say that.
So Ken's right. When you're putting it together, you might think this isn't going to come out very well. It's not going to look very good. You'll be very surprised at the way we designed it, how great it looks in the end. And as far as your feet or a pull knob, you can use just about anything you want. These are corks from the little bottles I had, the milk bottles last year, and I just glued them on. Ken found some, are they buttons?
Enamel dots.
Enamel dots that he used for his feet.
I just wanted something that was going to be low pro. Yeah. I just wanted something that was going to be low profile, but would still slide off the shelf easily if I needed it.
And the spokes, I'll call them spokes, inside are made of plastic, and that's what we recommend you getting. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Any 1/4-inch round item will fit in and replace these. So if you have straws that are 1/4 inch, go ahead and use straws. You could use wooden dowels too, but if you use wooden dowels, sliding these on wood might be a little difficult. So make sure you have them sanded really well, and maybe put some lacquer or something on it would help them slide.
But these are like heavier duty straws, kind of thicker plastic than regular drinking straws.
They're cake stand straws.
So they're not that expensive, and you can cut them to size easily with your pen blade or craft knife.
Or scissors.
Mm-hmm.
So get your glue out, get your chipboard out, get your papers that you want to use out, sit back, relax, watch Ken put his together, and then you could do yours.
And we have a link in the description to all the materials we use to make it easy if you want to just do a quick shopping trip.
So Ken, why don't you show him how to put it together?
Of course. So here we go. Here we have the base pieces for our Memorydex box laid out. The brown pieces correspond to the brown pieces in our cut file, and these are cut out of the chipboard that we recommended. The white pieces here correspond to the blue pieces in our cut file, and these can really be cut out of anything. We just used white cardstock, but you can use anything you have on hand to help reinforce the box. So you can use scraps. They don't have to be a color that coordinates with your project because they're going to be underneath your nice colored papers that you choose. Here I go laying out the pieces. I'm using the super adhesive double-sided tape, and I'm just trimming off a little excess so it doesn't stick out. And just make sure that it's got a really good adhesion. And here you put it on one side, and there's a score line which will help you line up, and you can use the tips of the little diamond shape. And I scored that before I put the tape on to help with making sure everything lines up. And you want to lay it out as I did here, with it folded up, because the chipboard has a bit of a space to it. So you don't want to butt it up right against it, because when you go to fold it up for real, then it'll be too tight. So you want to make sure you're laying it out standing up and kind of butt the pieces up against each other so you can make sure you have the appropriate gap between the two chipboard pieces. And I just smoothed it out to make sure everything had a good firm adhesion, and then moved on to the longer sides. Same process here. You can see I smoothed down the tape a little too much and it made the support curl, but it's not that big of an issue.
I think one of the best designs about our Memorydex box is it's very forgiving, especially when you put the decorative layer over the top of it. So if yours doesn't turn out perfect, don't sweat it, because it'll be easy. Ken's didn't turn out perfect.
Thanks for pointing that out. But again, the same approach where when you put the side on, you want to have it scored and ready. So do that before you take off the second piece of the adhesive backing. And then make sure it's folded up so you can leave that appropriate gap. With the white paper and the brown chipboard, you can see that there's a pretty significant gap there when you place that on the piece. Now to reinforce the pieces, I'm laying down a bead of regular adhesive. Here we're using Art's glitter glue, which we like a lot. And then this is just some kind of post-it tape we used on the corner, which actually didn't work out. It was actually too light of an adhesive. So you'll see in a minute that we switched over to painter's tape. So the painter's tape allows you to have that temporary adhesion and actually hold on to it, unlike those post-it things, while the glue dries. So it dries standing up. This is going to help support the shape of the box, and you're going to be adding some additional pieces that will help reinforce those corners. So you want something that's going to hold it up while it dries, but not stick and get in your way when you move on to the next step. I've let the box sit up and dry for about 15 to 30 minutes, and you really want to make sure that your glue is set before you move on to this next step. I've left the painter's tape on the corners to help reinforce it while I do this step. I'm adding in the end pieces on the inside of the box that have the holes where we're going to slot in the dowels that will be the rails for your Memorydex cards. So I laid out the glue, and you want to make sure when you're putting it in that the rail slots are closer to the bottom of the box, that you didn't get things flipped around and have your slots for the dowels accidentally flipped up. And I used some little clothespins with George had with our cute little Disney characters to help give a nice firm grip while the glue is drying. And I'm just pushing it down to make sure that it's smooth and the edges of the box line up. There's going to be a little bit where it might stick out, but they should be relatively flush. Before we put things together, I want to talk about the different pieces we make available to you. We have a public package and a set just for our patrons with different pieces. First are the outside pieces, and these are the same for all the sets. They go around the outside, and you can tell they're outside pieces because they don't have the holes for the dowels. These, like I said, will go around the outside, and then you place the bottom on. In the public set, we have a single interior piece, and this is just a plain shape, but you'll fold that up and that will go on the inside. Or you can use the individual pieces if you want to mix up your colors, though here I have it all in one color with blue. But if you want to kind of mix it up, you can with these different pieces. You'll do it just like the exterior, where you'll be doing the individual pieces around the outside, and then you will lay in the bottom piece to cover the little flaps. For our patrons, we have a scalloped one-piece sheet that is a little bit fancier, and this is what I'm going to be using in the project right now. I've already gone ahead and removed our little clothespins, and I'm finishing off removing the painter's tape before I start putting things on. Now, I pre-score the side pieces, and just remember your pattern and the direction if that's going to be important for the project. I think at one point I flip one of these pieces. You'll notice with the piece, one side is not as sloped as the other. The very sloped piece is going to be your bottom, so it's going to go on the box kind of like this. And I start with the top piece because that's the one that you kind of want to line up. And there's a flap that goes inside the box that's going to get covered up, and then the other flaps which go around to help support the edges. I just kind of use the score lines and the shape of the box itself to line things up. And I'm really making sure it's got some good adhesion and smoothed down, so that it's got a nice crisp edge on the top before I start doing the other pieces. And the other flaps, I'm scoring to make sure it's ready to go, putting on some adhesive, and it's not quite as obvious, but I'm using one of my fingers on the inside of the box to help support the corner because these flaps are what's going to support the corners and give it some rigidity. Right now, it's still not significantly supported. And then on the bottom, finish the other flap, and we can move on to the other sides. Already you can see that those little flaps are giving the rigidity and support to the box. So once again, just lining up my edges and putting the adhesive on the flaps. I was trying it a different way. I found it a little awkward juggling it before and things slid around. So this time I'm using the box to kind of hold down the flap while I was doing it. I think this worked out pretty good that way. You might want to play around with the side piece and the flaps beforehand to see what you're comfortable with. And just letting it sit for a minute before I move on so the flap doesn't pull up while the adhesive is still wet.
Now for this, you could use wet adhesive like Ken did, or you could use some more of the red line score tape or double-sided tape.
I just figured this was a little more forgiving with all the flipping around. I always have really bad luck with the super sticky red tape sticking at the wrong place.
So for my box, I used the red tape. And for this box, Ken's box, he used liquid adhesive. The art glitter glue, our favorite glue.
Now I've moved on to the longer pieces, and this is just a little bit different because it only has the two flaps at the top and the bottom. It doesn't have the extra flap that goes around the side. Here you can see I picked up both pieces and was testing the scoring, and that's because I accidentally didn't take into account the shape of the pieces when I was laying them out in Design Space and setting up my cuts on the mat. If I had done them with the proper slope to the pieces, where the less sloped was at the top and the angled was at the bottom, the star pattern would have been upside down in relation to the rest of the pieces. So as George said, this is a very forgiving project because I was able to catch that and the slopes weren't too much of a factor when laying things out.
So when you put the box together, just try to remember the less sloped angle is at the top or inside of the box, and the more sloped angle is on the bottom outside of the box.
On the bottom, you can see a little overlap of the flaps, but that gets covered up and it doesn't add too much extra thickness to your design. Now I'm ready to do the bottom, which will cover up the flaps. So this is just a simple rectangle. Give it some adhesive and set it down. I put the adhesive on the paper and then set it down. Might have actually been a little more easier to put the adhesive on the box, but you do have to take into account that there is a little bit of space. The rectangle doesn't cover the entire bottom of the box. So I just smooth it out, flipping it over to use the pressure so I can really push on the inside of the box to smooth out the glue. Now I'm ready to move on to the inside interior piece, and this is the scalloped one for our patrons. And remember that the design is going to be on the inside of the box, so when you're scoring it, you want it so your nice pretty design that you want to be the forefront is on the inside. Here, I just put it in first to make sure that everything lines up properly and that I don't have to trim any little excess off to try to make it fit well. Everything ended up fitting right off. So I pop it out and get ready to lay down our adhesive. So a pretty good bead on the bottom to hold down the base. And then just the sides. And be careful you don't get any extra adhesive into your dowel slots. And just because I'm paranoid, I put a little extra adhesive around the outer edge to smooth down and make sure that that doesn't pull away or curl up. And I pop that right in, and you can kind of pinch the edges so you don't smear your glue all over the place. You can see on one edge that wasn't quite as successful, but it works out. Dries clear. It's okay if the little notches for the dowels don't line up exactly 100%. As long as they're aligned pretty well, you'll be okay with getting the dowel into the holes.
And as you can see, the overlap from the outside paper with the scallop edge looks really nice on the inside.
I'm ready to cut our dowels. In this case, we're using plastic cake stands. You want to measure and make sure you're measuring the kind of entire width of the box, not just the inside, because you want them to have a little extra to go into the notch. I don't want to give you a specific size because it might be a little bit different depending upon the guide. So I've marked them off and measured out, and I'm just leaving a notch so I can rotate it, and I'm using our trusty pen blade to cut them, using the metal ruler as a base to cut on, since this isn't a self-healing mat. And this doesn't have to be perfect because it'll go into the hole, and you want to have a little touch of an extra length to make sure it's a good solid fit. With those cut to size, I just clear off the pencil and I go ahead and slot them into the notch. You can see that it kind of bends just a little, and mine paper didn't line up exactly with the holes, so I'm just giving them a little spin to make sure that they fit into the hole well and they're being held firmly into place without being distorted or bent too much. So there you go. You can leave the box as is, but we chose to put feet on the boxes that we've done so far. In this case, I'm using some enamel dots, and this is just to give it a little bit of a lift off the table surface, and it will help it slide, like when you're pulling it forward on the shelf to look at your cards, your Memorydex cards, or add more. So I just put the larger enamel dots in each corner to act as a little foot. It just gives it enough of a lift off the surface of the table.
I used cork stoppers on my box, so really you could use anything that you want.
Just use something that will coordinate with your design, add a little bit of character. So there you go. It slides a little bit more easier, so if you're moving it around, it's not necessarily going to skid across the shelf.
See, it was a little bit long, but it wasn't that difficult, was it, in the end?
No.
Did it come out better than you thought it would when you were putting it together?
Yeah, I thought it came out pretty good. The only thing I wanted to do is maybe make things line up a little bit better in the corners.
I really didn't have that trouble.
Yeah, yours came out really good. Mine was a little looser. But with the cards in there, you won't notice.
So we hope everybody makes a Memorydex box and joins the Crafty Explorers Facebook group, because we're going to start swaps soon. And if you post a picture of the Memorydex box you make in the Crafty Explorers Facebook group, you'll be entered into a contest to win a $25 gift card to a store of your choice. So this is our monthly adventure that we do where we challenge people.
That's what I was just going to ask. When do they have to enter by?
So we're near the end of February. Let's say that people have to the end of March 2018 to enter their photo in the Crafty Explorer Facebook group to get entered into our contest. And one person, maybe two people, could win a gift card to a store of their choice, as long as we can buy the gift card online. Until next week, when Ken will show you how to do this great Memorydex card, we'll talk to you later. Bye!
Bye.
We want to give a shout out to just some of our patron supporters: Lori Browse, Linda Collins, Gina, Mary Sarkis, Tabitha Carroll, Marjorie Poshia, and Arlene Birchold. Thank you for your support. So we have instructions for the silhouette